Yeah, and I think that's a fair cry, and especially with Larry Nance since where he went back to Cleveland. I think they are probably looking for that one more big. So, and it's free agency is one of those things where unless you have guys you are really targeting out the gate, it's going to maybe take a week or two to obviously add some guys. So, like the Hawks are not done; they still have some spots they need to get to. So it'll be interesting to see who they do bring in for that third big, whether it's a third center, and see what that looks like for them. And I think too, I've heard people also mention just they need another big wing behind Zach. I've heard that because after Zach, I mean Luke and Alexander Walker are not. They're not big. Like they're not like 6'7", 6'8" guys. They're like 6'5" guys. And so people are like, okay, well, Zach goes down. Now you're kind of playing a slightly smaller, group of players in that position. Even though it can work, it's just, they're not bigger. And some people are not sure if do the Hawks have that type of confidence in Vic Krejci. Because essentially he would be your backup three, I guess, as of right now, depending, again, how they play things, rotations, things like that. But on the depth chart, it would say Vic Krejci, which I think Vic Krejci's came a long way as a shooter. Obviously, he's really improved that. And I've always said, and he's a ball handler, so that's why he also has value to this team. But do you also see that with that? Do you think they need to also be aiming just to get another big wing? Or you think that, hey, we have some comfortability with Krejci?
I don't think that's his ideal role.
Mm-hmm.
Vita is an NBA player to me. But, like, if you just look on the sheet of paper and it says 6'8", like, he doesn't play like a 6'8" player. He's not that big and he's not that strong. And he can do some really good things defensively. Like, when he was healthy, like this last season, I think he had some bumps and bruises. And it didn't, he wasn't necessarily the defender that he was the season before. But there was, like, a month in the 23-24 season where he was, like, really good on defense. But what he was good at was defending on the ball with some smaller players and using his size and length and quickness, kind of like Zachary. Zachary's not the strongest guy, but when you combine quickness with length, that really, can throttle some smaller players. And so Zachary's just bigger than Veet, though. Like, Veet needs to be defending guards. The guy that I'm intrigued about in terms of like a small forward thing is like Nikola Jurisic, who played. They drafted him before last season, and then he just signed a contract to just play in College Park, not as a two-way player, nothing to do with the NBA. He just signed to play for their G League team for a season. He's a very gifted offensive player as a creator. He doesn't have a great jump shot yet, but like, he can make every read when he has the ball in his hands. Like he's a very creative passer, and he knows angles to getting to the rim, which he did pretty well in College Park. Again, that was against G League defenses, but that team had pretty awful spacing. Like, they didn't have a lot of shooting. If Jurisic is playing with the Hawks group that has spacing, as a guy who is a very good creator, that intrigues me. And I think that he does have some strength that V doesn't have. Like, he has that same kind of length, but he's a little bit more of a built, stronger defender. And I wouldn't necessarily want to see him defending in space on quick guys as much. But I think if you have a wing who's not a superb offensive player, I think Jurisic can stay with him, box out, get some defensive rebounds. Like, I think, guarding average threes is something that he can handle. So, maybe he could be kind of the bigger defender, what are we going to do when Trey's not handling the ball kind of situation. Veet certainly has him in terms of experience and shooting. But, if you need somebody to guard bigger players, I think that might be something that Jurisic can do.
Yeah. And he was an interesting guy when we took him, because the people, I think, it's one of those games where you see talent, and it's just now developing that talent where then it's like, okay, then can he use that talent, become a guy who can be in the rotation? And you know, obviously the fact that they essentially stashed him in College Park, essentially, just kind of getting him familiar with the system and the players. I think that's also a big part of it too. And the guy that they obviously, I would think, still have expectations for to eventually be a part of this, you know, depending on how things go. Obviously, new CBA changes things. So I feel like development's even more important than ever to have guys ready to go. So, you know, that's an interesting name for sure.
Yeah, and to be clear, he was not like when he started that G League season. First of all, he wasn't healthy to start the season. So when he came back to action, I think it was kind of a work his way up to full speed kind of situation. But he was awful. Let's be clear, he was awful as a defender, and he worked. Like, he changed that. By the time he got into the meat of the G League season, they kind of threw him in the fire. They said, hey, you know what? Go guard on the ball. And it's like, really? You're going to have him do that? And he kind of figured out some of that stuff. They really coached him hard to figure out, like, pick up points, how to use his length against speed. I don't know that that's necessarily a role that he's going to thrive in the NBA. I think he's probably going to need to be more of an off-ball defender. But the fact that they gave him those reps and really took him from a 0 to like a 75 on a scale from 0 to 100, he could be like a real option for them. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a 2-way contract and they like what they see. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. And listen, I think people. It's always funny. You always go through off season and people are like, "Hey, what about this guy? Remember this guy? You sure he can't play for us this year?" So I mean, he's definitely gonna be one of those names I think you're gonna mention. And I would expect to see him on the summer league team. I would think this year as well. So it'll be another way just to kind of see how his progression has come along this offseason.
I would also suspect that he's going to play for Serbia. I think he's probably going to make that roster and play in Eurobasket. So that might be another opportunity to see, like, how far has he come along?
Yeah, especially because, those international teams, I mean, I think those are great experiences. That was the first taste we had of Dyson Daniels last year. Was he playing for Australia? And everyone's like, this guy might be better than we think. We got to see what he does. And then he ended up having a great year for us. So, hey, I mean, all reps are good reps, I would say, for him. So can't hate that at all. But so now let's transition here to, I guess, the heads of the snake here for the team. And let's talk about Trae Young. Obviously, star of the team, everything. People have tried to ask about the commitment, if Trae is going to be here. We're still wondering if he's going to sign an extension this offseason. But I also said with some of the moves they've made that I feel like there has been I don't want to say like some like, here you go message, but there's been a message from the Hawks to Trae, like, hey, trying to build something here. We started it last year with trying to get players that fit you best and are best for you to play with. And now we've added some really high, like some higher level guys like a Porzingis and Alexander Walker. And, reports, people say Trae Young is locked in. Well, Ansi said that, and that he's excited about what's going on. Can you just talk about, Trae from, when he started in the league to now, and just, how he's come along, especially this past year, because they asked him to be more of a leader, to take the young guys under their wing. And he has showed investment and commitment to this organization through all the rumors, trade rumors. I think we went to like 2-3 years of that. Oh, does he want out? And it feels like all indications feel like he will be here, but we just won't know till pen is to paper, I guess. But can you just talk about Trae and just how he's came along?
Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot as a leader. Like, he came into the league, as a lot of 19-year-olds do. You're just there to play. Like, you don't have to direct the team in any sort of way. But this is now a very young team. Like, there are not a lot of old guys on this team. Alexander Walker's, not that old. Kennard's kind of middle of his career. Porzingis is kind of middle of his career. Like, there's no old heads like Larry Nance or George Niang on this team. Like, they maybe they need that in some of the back end of the roster spots that they put together, but they might also just count on Trae for this. Like, this is something that he needs to do now. I think it's easier for him when he sees the vision of competing like Trey. Trey has high standards. He has high standards for himself. He has high standards for his team. He has high standards for the executives of the team and their decision making. Like he holds himself and everybody else to a high standard. So like that's a fair thing to do. When you do that for yourself, it's not hard to see you expecting a lot out of other people. But I think he now sees a path to how to elevate his teammates that maybe he didn't necessarily have before. And last season he got to experience that with some. Bringing Dyson and Zachary was helpful in so many ways for the on-court product, but I think it was also important for Trey. Like those two players were sort of his two, that the two players on which he was on sort of a co-mission with them to elevate them. And they did. Like Zachary came in second in the Rookie of the Young race. Dyson came, most improved player came out first. Like, between those two players, I think he saw that when I invest and the organization has brought in the right players for me to work with, I can elevate them and we can make this thing work. So I think he's ready to do that now with the additional players that they've brought in who are older and more, savvy than Dyson and Zach were. But Trey still has to be the chemist that makes all the pieces fit together.
Yeah. And on top of that, think about it. I mean, Porzingis is an NBA champion. Alexander Walker has been in deep playoff runs. So some of the guys they brought in, I mean, Kennard's been a part of some playoff runs with Memphis. So they've brought in some guys with some experience in those positions. And Trey, obviously, is Congo are probably the last two longest tenured guys, and also were on the Eastern Conference Finals team. So they've kind of been the ones that I think guys like Dyson, Jalen, and Zach would rely on in the playoffs almost. Because, playoffs, as you've seen, is such a up and down situation, especially for guys who are not the stars, quote unquote, even though stars can have bad games. But it's like you see a player just like terrible game, but come back, have a great game. And it's a 7-game series, so that can happen. And, that you would probably expect that with those three guys. Like, hey, Dyson's going to have a game where it's not great, but you hope he can, bounce back. And same thing for Zach. And I think Trey will be a big part of trying to keep those guys, just composed and confident when in those situations. And another person who's a part of that is Quinn Snyder. I feel like Quinn, his coming here was obviously, different coming in the middle of the season. You don't usually see that coach coming from, in vacation saying, oh, okay, yeah, I'll become the head coach. And he's had to deal with some things. So the roster construction has always been the best. As you've mentioned, having the 4 position, you're playing Bay, man, dang. Like you're playing these guys there. But I always talk about that part of like going into the NBA Cup. And like when you saw when they were kind of healthy, you kind of saw what this team could be. They were able to win games 106-102. Which I think is extremely important because you have to be able to win games like that instead of just making it a high-scoring affair. But then obviously injuries and that changed. What do you think of how Quinn has done as the coach so far as he goes into a year where I feel like this will probably be the first year, I guess, he's under pressure to win some games, especially with the expectations now?
Yeah. It's It's funny that you brought up and kind of leading into this question, you brought up, like playing Sadiq Bey at power forward. Like that was almost like a crutch for Quinn, but it was like, and I think he did it a little bit with like Niang last year where it's like, okay, things aren't going great. I got to ride my shooting power forward.
Mm-hmm.
And God bless Clint Capella. But, the last 2 seasons, he has not been the player that he was during the Eastern Conference Finals run.
Mm.
And so, Quinn probably felt like, Clint has to be out there. I got to halfway space the floor for Trey so that he can, get the team into the offense. I need to have my shooting power forward to get the defense, committed enough that Trey's going to have a little bit of space. But I do feel at times like that has been a losing recipe, and that may be like one sort of fair critique of Quinn giving all the caveats that he didn't really have a whole lot of better options. Well, now, he does. Like they're blessed with a number of opportunities where they can kind of put 2 rebounders, 2 rim protectors out there at the same time. They're not going to have the same kind of clog space. In addition to Clint declining, it was also just not a situation where Clint really fit what Quinn wants to do the way Onyeka or Larry Nance or somebody did. Like, it was just kind of an odd fitting part. And so now it just feels like the personnel all meshes together a lot better than it has in previous years. So it's kind of an open book. Like, I think Quinn has done really everything else right. Like, he's really changed the offense to a, cutting edge modern NBA offense that doesn't let defenses focus in on one thing. Like, it keeps things moving. It keeps things happening all over the floor in different parts, so the defenses can't hone in on, the one action that they need to hone in on. So it's like, and so he's done that well. He's done the part about getting Trey to commit well. Like, Trey is committed to Quinn in a manner unlike he has with any previous coach. Like, he was not that bought in with Nate. He was not that bought in with Lloyd Pierce. Like, he is bought in on Quinn. He sees the vision. He's bought in. So Quinn's done that. Like, so Quinn's done all the big things right. And, it's kind of an open book on what it's going to look like when the pressure's on. The pressure really hasn't been on in these two previous seasons, but, people around the league have taken notice of this roster that the Hawks have put together, and the expectations are higher and the pressure is going to be there. But, Quinn has a reasonably good track record, from what he did in Utah of taking good teams and making good things happen. But, it remains to be seen how it's going to play out with this team.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to kind of see how he adjusts to what they can do. Because, like I said, I think that he has a vision, he has a plan and a formula he wants to do, and he feels like now, you get the roster closer to the team. So I think that can work and everything. So it is really interesting. But one last question, I'll let you go, Kevin. Obviously, the Hawks made that decision to let go Landry Fields earlier this offseason. Onsi has came in, and like I mentioned, people feel like he's done a really good job so far. And I said that the way this search has gone, I think, has shown confidence in him and how much the Hawks have liked him. The fact that you made that decision, you interviewed people for the president of basketball operations and said, you know what, let's just stick with this guy. Even though he doesn't have experience, quote unquote, but he's been a part of the Spurs, the Warriors. Obviously it's been a short time, and I know he just talked to the media for the first time a week ago, but I guess give your impressions of Onsi, I guess, so far.
Yeah, I always kind of thought that Onsi was a very likely candidate when they opened up the president of basketball operations. Not that he is the president of basketball operations, but it just seemed like they knew they had a guy that they trusted to sort of run the show in Onsi. I think they knew they had that. That was like, they didn't know what the whole poker hand was going to look like, but they knew they had, one ace to pair with things if they didn't like what they saw coming down the line. Mm-hmm. I thought it was, from what I've heard, that was a pretty broad interview process. Like, I think they had a whole slew of candidates, according to the numbers that I heard. But like, at the same time, to me, even though you heard leakings of, okay, so-and-so interviewed for this, somebody was brought in to talk about this job opening in Atlanta, I think a lot of that was sort of the unlikely candidates kind of leaking because, hey, if you interview for one job, then maybe somebody else will interview you 3 months from now, 9 months from now. They just want to kind of get their name out there. I always felt that there were very few people that they would actually be interested in. Like, Bob Myers was like one, like, but maybe like if I try to sit down and like write out, okay, who are all the people that I believe would be under serious consideration to take this and would actually take it, mm-hmm. Maybe 3, 4, 5 names, like to try to get both halves, have the Hawks be interested and have this other person be interested. Like, It just didn't seem like there was that big of a pool of people who would do it. So combining that with the fact that they knew they had one guy that they believed in, I kind of suspected it would be Beyonce all along.
Hey, and it seems like I said, so far,
So
seems
far,
like he's doing a
so
great job. So I mean, hey, can't hate him,
yeah,
man.
and I really like his process. Like Boston's got to do something. They don't want to pay like this multiplier penalty for being in the second apron for however many years in a row. Okay, well, see what we can do with Boston. Joe Dumars is in love with Dairy Queen. My vice president that I brought in last week knows exactly what Joe Dumars is thinking because he was in New Orleans until a month ago. They love Dairy Queen. Okay, well, let's see how much they love Dairy Queen. They love Dairy Queen a lot. We're gonna get this, and they extracted something there. So it just seems like they are winning the margins. Like they are just any chance that they can find to find value, they are finding value, and so being an opportunist is good, I think.
Yeah, and I think it works out for the team. You can make those types of moves, and now people are like, "Hey, they end up having not a great season. Hawks could get a top lottery pick, and now they're getting a player and people consider a very deep draft class next year to add to what they're doing." So I think that's obviously, I think, really exciting. I remember day after the draft, they said, "I still can't believe the Pelicans did that." So I mean, it not to rain on the parade of Pelicans, but I remember also someone saying with Joe Dumars, "You enter the Joe Dumars sweepstakes. What team will fleece him this year? Congratulations, Atlanta. You were that team." So it's a funny thing, man. But we'll have to continue to see what happens as we continue to move forward, and like I said, see who else they bring in as we get into the free agency a little bit deeper. But Kevin, I appreciate you, man, for hanging in there with me, man, throughout the show, man. I appreciate you for sure. Let people know where they can find you.
Oh, I'm on Twitter at KLCHOUINARD. And Hawks.com and an ATL and 29 podcast with Glenn and Tyler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely go check out all his work. Great work. Great pod. Everything under the sun. Obviously appreciate you coming on, sharing some of your wisdom with me for sure, man. But obviously, guys, if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment down below. Audio listeners available on any audio podcast out there. Definitely, if you can, leave a rating. Hopefully 5 stars. Appreciate you. And follow me on X at Bryce_2K. And that's my social across all socials as well, guys. But I think that's about all we have here for Believe in Hawks. That's Kevin. I'm Bryce. See you next time.